So welcome everybody to this meeting of the Human Resources Committee on Wednesday, the 11th of September, at 7 o'clock. Can I just remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded, so please use your microphones when speaking. So if we can just start with the first item on the agenda. Which is apologies. Have we received any apologies for absence?
Yep, we've received apologies for absence from Councillor Butcher and Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you. So moving on to item 2, minutes of the meeting of the 5th of June 2024, pages 5 to 22 in the agenda pack. So does anyone have any amendments or comments on those minutes? No? Do I have someone who'll propose those minutes? Thank you. Councillor Hollaburn.
Chair, asked propose acceptance of the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. And would anyone like to second that? Councillor Swainston? All those in favour? So that's everybody. So that's carried. Moving on to item 3, Chair's announcements. Really, I don't have a lot to say here, other than thank you very much to the officers for all the work that they've done in preparing these papers, particularly Alex, and also Peter for all the health and safety work. So thank you very much for that. So I think we should just and also for bringing back the policy, the volunteer policy that that we asked to be brought back to this meeting. So I think we should just crack on with item number 4, which is declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Okay, so if we can move on to the quarterly one statistics update, pages 23 to 40, and see if any members have any comments on that. Councillor Connolly.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. I mean, it's fine. There's lots of information in there. On page 32, it describes the council's responsibilities for contractors, but there's no data on contractor accidents or near misses that I could see in the last quarter. I think we have seen them on previous reports.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. We did used to provide more in-depth and in detailed information on contractor statistics, but we were asked to omit them from committee because the HR committee is staff rather than the contractors' accidents in terms of what happens to their operatives. So we pulled that section of the report out.
Thank you. So can I ask what oversight there is? Where do they get reported?
So obviously the contractor themselves are responsible for ensuring that reports are received for incidents, near misses, accidents, and the contract managers appointed to oversee the contracts have regular meetings with those contractors to review those statistics, both for the shared waste service, grounds maintenance contract, sport and leisure management. So we can identify if there are any points of concern we would raise with the contractor to ask specifically why there's been a spike or a peak in a certain area or a certain risk or category type. So the oversight is with the contract management team, responsible for overseeing each of the contracts that we have in place. So in terms of the operational responsibility, that rests with the employer who has the contract. So with regards to grounds maintenance, that would be Glendale. and it would be a BASA or FCC for shared waste service street cleansing. So they would have their own company and policy, organisational documents and procedures, but they are asked to provide statistical information so that we can review it. What we're particularly looking for are any incidents or near misses where members of the public may be affected because they're in the public domain. So those are the areas we specifically would be looking for if a vehicle has had impact with another vehicle, or there's been altercation with members of the public. Those are issues we would want to be looking at. So those are the things that are being looked at by the contract managers.
Thank you.
Do we know who the exec member is who's got oversight of the council's contracts, please?
That would be each. So, for example, I'm not sure who the oversight is for environment, but I would imagine shared waste service and street cleansing, and would come under one. Maybe sport and leisure management. Yeah.
It would be for each exec member for that contract that was under that they'd be responsible for. So I would assume that Councillor Hoskin would be responsible for waste contract and so on.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Hollibon.
Thank you, Chair. On page 37, in relation to, excuse me, Old River Lane, do we know if the planning application is in, or I know it says in the autumn? Well, it feels like autumn out there to me tonight. I'm just asking if it's come in yet. Can anybody answer that?
Councillor Swainston.
I can answer because I'm on the ORL board. I'm not sure what that's got to do with human resources.
It's here in the paper for discussion.
Is
Page
it?
37.
Oh, sorry, I
it
must
says.
have missed that bit. No, the planning application won't go in until after the development agreement is signed. The development agreement has not been signed yet, as far as I'm aware. We're hoping that it will be shortly. And then there will be all the normal planning processes. So there'll be master planning and all that sort of thing before they put their planning application in again.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, Councillor Hollibon.
Thank you, Chair. Again, in the next paragraph down, it's about the public consultation. Again, we all know it's taking place at the moment. And obviously, I'm wondering when the data is going to be completely analysed and submitted to members for discussion, if that's possible to answer. Thank you.
I don't have an answer for that. But yeah, so a written answer will be supplied for that one. Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? Anything else anyone wants to ask on the statistics? Okay. If there's nothing else that anyone wants to raise at this point. I'm just going to check to see if there's any other questions I wanted to raise. Yeah, I think on page 29. Yeah, so this is just a question for information, really, just to find out a little bit more, ask a little bit more about the new applicant tracking system for obviously for job applicants, and how that's, you know, what the differences are really from the current system, and how it will improve the process.
Yeah, I can answer that one, Chair. Yeah, so the new system is a system called TribePad. So yeah, a bit of a trendy name, I suppose. But so that's a commercial system. Other councils, of kind of recommended it, that are using them. So that was something that Ellie, when she was here as head of service, kind of started the process. So it's been quite a while kind of coming. So she got recommendations from other heads of service. I actually very briefly used it at an old employer. And basically, I suppose that the difference really is it's a modern application system, really. So the current one we have, supposed to give a little bit of background, is it was kind of a bit of a bolt on to the way that we were doing recruitment. So we used to buy credits, or I suppose we still do at the moment. We buy credits for kind of advertising on job boards, and this was kind of a system that company gave you, and it's really not fit for purpose. And I suppose it's something that is alluded to in the equalities report. It's kind of caused some problems with reporting, and it's not really, like a good system, should we say? It's something that is, not really fit for purpose for us. So I suppose the difference really with the new one is it's going to be a lot better in terms of reporting. So when we think about qualities data and fairness, it's got things inbuilt to help us gather that data in a good way. In terms of kind of things in terms of automation, so it can help us automate some of our processes. Where at the moment we're quite paper-based and systems don't talk to each other, so it's quite manual, like literally entering from one system to another, copy, not even really copy and paste, it's typing from forms. So it'll give us that opportunity to open that up, and I think there is a potential for that to connect with our payroll system as well. So new starter processes, people can put them on online, type all the information in, that can be copied across into the payroll system. So obviously that's going to help our administrators in terms of actually being able to work on projects and move the department forwards rather than just data input and stuff like that when we have a lot of new starters. And I suppose Beams definitely put us under pressure because it's quite a manual process, so it's going to alleviate some of those problems. Again, I was told there's some different functionalities that are quite good, so there'll be ways to ask for references. So at the moment we're manually emailing past employers, but there's a process where you can put the details in, the system will email for a reference request and does the kind of auto chases and stuff like that. So it's really like that kind of modern system, and something that we're quite pleased to explore, which the old system couldn't really do, was things like blind applications. So it can kind of really help us against bias, because as everyone has unconscious bias, it's hard to fight. So there's something that's really good there in terms of helping us with tools to make it a bit of a fairer process, and just different tools to help us sort everything's a bit more modern and sleek. Quite a long answer. There's quite a lot of stuff to do. There's also things like contracts. So we have different contracts for different roles. It'll have the ability for our administrators to kind of have some preset forms, so they can kind of tick so many boxes and it makes the contract together for them, rather than having to kind of manually make a contract in a Word document every time. So it's really just bringing us into the modern world with that application system, and hopefully make it a fairer system for applicants, probably easier for the applicant side. Emily is working with the system people now to kind of do all of the pre-work, and we'll be able to find out what the user journey is once that's kind of been developed and shown. But everything I've seen so far is very impressive. So looking forward to be able to showcase it when it's been built and a bit more launched, but we're kind of in that real building stage, and then we'll be able to train managers now to use it, and all that kind of stuff is coming in the next kind of quarter or so.
Thank you very much. Before we do take the vote, is there anything else that you'd like to highlight on the paper?
So I suppose in terms of the paper, there's a couple of things to highlight. I think the sickness absence, I think I mentioned it last time with the yearly reports, as we're moving into equalities. Some of these are maybe because we have our demographic is slightly older, and there's some of those more chronic illnesses that happen. So we are having some long-term sickness from, I suppose, unavoidable illnesses. So they're things that are very unfortunate, but we can't really do an awful lot about, apart from support people with occupational health. We are reviewing the occupational health provider. So Peter's in the room here. Peter's taking charge of that, and we're kind of going to aim for a new live date in January, and try and link that together with mental health provision as well. So we do have some mental health first aiders, and I'm really looking to make sure that we have that linked up and connected, and that people can use that mental health provision as well as our employee assistance program. So we've got that structure of supporting people, because some of the long-term SIP has been mental health related. I think most of the cases from kind of having a of you in HR aren't particularly work-related stress. I think there's lots of things going on in people's lives that are causing stress. But obviously work is something on people's plates. So doctors tend to sign people off just to say, let's take something away. So that's where we're finding that the mental health provision there, that as again, I'm quite keen to push for mental health first aiders this year coming forward, so we can make sure we have that support and make sure we're a strong environment for people to get the support that they need, as well as obviously the professional medical help, which is, you know, you can't beat that. That's what people need. So they're the kind of areas there. So Peter's been working very hard on making sure Beam is safe and secure as well. So, and he's obviously happy to answer any questions there. So, and also the move from the top floor to the bottom floor for mostly housing and health have moved down. Peter's been working very hard to make sure that's been safe and secure and working for that. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Peter for his work, making sure that that was as smoothly done as possible. And I think it's everyone's safe and secure down there at the moment, aren't they? So it's well done. So yeah, that's my comments.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Connolly.
Apologies, I'd forgotten that the health and safety minutes are part of this report. It's not a separate agenda item. So I have got a concern on page 39 to 40. In the health and safety minutes, it was noted that officers are not aware of their, but found not to be aware of their organisational roles and responsibilities as regard the health and safety policy, and we're assuming that rests with the health and safety officer. It talked about 3 options of things that could be done, but then the item didn't, I can't see that it concluded on any of them. The most important one, I think, is mandatory training aimed at the heads of service and service managers, which was the first option, but it didn't action that. So I'd be interested to see how that develops over time. I mean, there are fantastic courses out there. There's the IOSH Managing Safely course, which managers can do. It's a really well established course, and it's good for people's CV once they've done it. It's a certificate that they can do. Well, so, you know, it's a bonus if people get through that course. There are inexpensive ways of doing it online, which not really that. It's quite a detailed course, or somebody in-house could get accredited to deliver it in-house. So there are options. I think it's really quite important that we explore them, especially as we've talked about pulling away the stats of contractors from this forum. Then, you know, managers of contracts need to certainly understand their health and safety responsibility. So I don't know how you take that forward.
If I could just come in, we have run the IOSH Managing
Okay,
Safely
good, yeah.
on a number of occasions for leadership team and heads of service. So it's something we were actually going to discuss at our team meeting yesterday, because Alex wants to look at the training program going forward. So that would be one of those things that we feed into it, because it's pretty critical that obviously, you know, certain heads of service will have areas of much higher responsibility than some other heads of service. So head of operations, for example, does have those higher risk work areas, and actually is one of the heads of service that is incredibly keen to make sure that things do operate smoothly, safely. We're all now very much aware that the Grenfell report has come out. We are anticipating there will be further changes in the pipeline. They will come through in time. We have been working to preempt some of those potential changes by introducing the red fire safety boxes on the outside of our buildings, which contain information for the fire service. We've already installed those. Whilst it's not a mandatory requirement for commercial or office premises, it will be for residential, but we anticipate that will have a trickle down effect. So we've already put them into place. They're there, they're ready. They've got the documents are inside on our building. So we're already preempting potentially some of those changes that will come down, but we don't know what they will be long term. But yes, certainly it's part of the proposal we'll be putting together for management training will be to include aspects around understanding roles, responsibilities, what their roles are, how that gets managed, how it gets reported. So, yeah, but yeah, we've definitely run the IOSH before. It's a very good course.
There is a 1-day refresher as well.
Yes,
That
there is.
might
Yeah,
be useful
yeah.
if people have done it before.
yeah, it's
Thank
quite good. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Peter, for that report. So, are we happy then? Are we happy just to go on and to note this report? Let me just check what we're supposed to do here. Right, yes. So recommendations are to consider the Human Resources Management Report for Q1, April to June 2024, and provide any comments to the HR officer, head of HR and OD regarding the content or formatting of the report. So can I have a proposer? Councillor Connolly, the seconder, Councillor Hollybon. All those in favour? I think that's everybody. Good, so that's carried. So now we're moving on to item 6, which is the equalities report. So if I can hand over to Alex to introduce that report.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so as I stated, this is our annual equalities report. So this is where we'll obviously report on the protected characteristics mainly. As I mentioned before, our recruitment system currently has had some problems. So my HR officer, Claire, has had some interesting times trying to get some of the figures. So you'll note that some of the figures have been noted where she's been unable to get those. So I'm really looking forward to having this system in place. So we should have some more solid data next year to be able to show that. But one of the actions was for people to update, I suppose their information is probably the best way to say it on My View, which is something we've put out in the staff update. So we did try our best to try and get the figures as best as we can. But again, it's something that people have to declare. So in this space, there's always going to be some gaps. So this is, as I said, having a look at all of our protected characteristics as per the Equalities Act. In terms of the overall kind of equalities profile of the council, so we have a predominantly female workforce, about 70% compared to 51.6, I think Claire's found in the data in terms of the usual split there, but that does reflect public sector trends. There is kind of a note that there are more females in the public sector. As noted before, the profile is older. So we're 47% of our employees between 50 and 64 years old. I think this does give us some different things to consider in terms of, when we do have that age force that, especially with the local government pension, they are kind of in that retirement bracket. We do have to think about how do we attract more junior officers and how do we transfer those skills, and that's something to consider. I think the report, we've got quite a lot of ideas and different ways to attract some things. I think in terms of different minority groups, we have been quite successful in recruiting different kind of minority groups. I suppose the only thing just to highlight in notes was that we did have quite a high rejection rate for some Asian applications, but that was purely due to some job roles being picked up on. We've got a lot of applications from India. So actually discussing this, I think that in the world of algorithms and where things get picked up, I think it just literally went into somewhere where we've got a lot of people from India apply who weren't qualified or didn't have right to work in the UK. So there were a lot of rejections there, but they were kind of very valid because something in the world happened. Actually, talking to Councillor Dumont in his recruitment business, he said he actually had something really similar where he had a lot of same thing happened in Africa. Had loads of people apply for Africa and didn't know why. So I think it's just that kind of technology side of things and job boards picking things up. So we're quite confident that our managers, we've been reviewing, making sure that they're as unbiased as possible and as valid. We have a valid recruitment process. We have panels and we have a clear process where everyone recruited, all the notes from the interviews and all the scoring is kept in HR. So when people do get appointed, then we do have that paper trail and we can make sure that we're quite robust in saying that it was a fair process and the best person was recruited. And then I suppose in some of the actions there, and it's something that I'm quite keen to work on. I think we've spoken in past meetings is doing such things as professional apprenticeships and really trying to grow our own. So that's something I'm currently working on. I'm hoping to bring to this meeting as soon as I can. I never like to commit to a deadline in the council. I think that there's a few hoops to go through, different levels of meetings to bring things to, but hopefully I can bring my L&D approach soon to you all, just to show how we can really use apprenticeships and use our experienced staff members to mentor them, and really kind of try and develop our own approach, which I think is a really good way when it's such a tight labour market for lots of key roles. You know, planning and environmental health always scream out, but actually quite a lot of the roles are getting quite hard to recruit for in all the councils. So I suppose overall we've got some actions there, which, you know, I invite you to scrutinise. I feel that the equalities report shows that we're, you know, in line with our local demographics. There's some dials that are a bit slower to move. But again, that's something that we're aware of, and I think this report can really help us inform our decision making going forwards. So I suppose you're open to questions really, if anyone has any further details they'd like.
Thanks very much, Alex. And I think the work on the apprenticeships is a very sort of encouraging thing, and something certainly I'm sure a lot of councillors would support. Are there any questions? Yep, councillors.
Just a comment, really. I think last year we were a bit concerned that it wasn't easy to compare some things. I think it's a really good report. It's very clear. We're able to see everything that we need to see. So thank you for that.
I suppose I just want to say on that note as well, we do have something called Affinistats we've finally got signed up for, which is something that the ILGA, the East Anglian Local Government Association, work with. So we're now signed up to that, and I spoke to our kind of local rep on Thursday at an ILGA meeting, and she's really keen just to help us get on board. So we've got the system. So we've got the tools, we just need the idea. So we're going to get a bit of training and work out how we can use that. And then hopefully we can do a bit more benchmarking and bring a bit of that in as well. Because I know that's something that I think was asked for before. But yeah, we're hoping that the stats and the data is clear. So thank you for that. I'll feed that back to my officer Claire. She'll be very pleased because she put a lot of blood, sweat and tears into getting these details. So thank you.
Any further comments? Anyone else want to say anything? I think I just had a comment about people about just noting that the proportion of people with of employees with a disability is lower than the proportion of residents with a disability, and I suppose perhaps factored into that is that people. Am I right in thinking people have to self-declare? So there may be a level of underreporting with that as well.
Absolutely, yeah. It's something that people will declare, and obviously, I think traditionally there has been a stigma for that. I think people don't tend to want to tell their employers. So that's something that's changing. Yeah, I suppose from my life in HR is, if you don't tell us, we can't help you. So I think I've been much more encouraged for people to tell us that you have a disability and support you with that. And I think, you know, we do have quite a we try and use occupational health as much as we can to get that like professional advice to support us and put reasonable adjustments in. And I say I've been with the council 9 months now, and I think the council really does have a good approach for helping people with reasonable adjustments. I've seen a lot of things in place which in private sectors wouldn't have happened. So it's good to see there's that compassion from managers to help and support people. So I think that's good. And we are definitely aware of that. And you know, I was talking to Peter earlier, and things like when we were doing the volunteer recruitment, which we're going to move on to, but when we were getting the volunteers coming on, Peter even thought about, okay, how do we make this accessible, and make sure he booked rooms that were accessible for people in the building, and just having that second thought of how to make it an accessible place. And I suppose with TriPad, one of the things there is that I know as a modern system, it's going to be a bit more accessible for people with different needs. So I'm looking forward to having a more modern system to support with that. So yeah, it's definitely something that's thought about in HR.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, if there are no further comments, our recommendations are to note the annual equalities report 2023-24 and consider and approve the recommendations, which are, just need to find them. Um, Right, okay, so I'm not going to read these out because they're quite detailed. But does anyone, have we all found them? Page 75 and 76, good. So would we, could I have a proposer then? Councillor Connolly and a seconder, Councillor Swainston. All those in favour? Thank you. So that's passed. Good. So, and I would like to say again, just thank you for all the work that's been that's happened in HR. We can see how much has been going on. It's really impressive. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 7, which is the Beam volunteering policy, which we asked to come back to us. So let's see, Alex, would you like to introduce this?
Yes, first of all, thanks. Thank you, Councillor Connolly, for sending your notes to us there. So yeah, very well received. So as we agreed, we said we'd go back to the operational team as well and have a look through all of the scrutiny, I suppose, is the best way to put it. So we've had a look through, and I think we've managed to be amenable to nearly all of the changes there. So everything was, we thought was very valid. We were able to do that with the team. As again, some of them were operational, so we're able, things such as the trainers and things we've managed to move. I think the only ones we couldn't do were just around this employment legislation. So we can't have a implied contracts. So there were some things where we had to be quite careful about not making an employment relationship. So those were probably the only ones that we've had to maybe push back. So I'm hoping that this is kind of in a fit state now for purpose for us. And I suppose my extra comments on this is that Beam has opened now, which is fantastic. We have got around about 80 volunteers, kind of actually very diverse, which is really good to see. So we have had, a very good response from the community. So I'm really pleased that we're able to work on the past version. So thank you very much for letting us move ahead with that. And I think to note that, Beam's in its infancy, and I think as we go along, we'll know what the operation needs and what it'll be able to provide for in terms of operate. I think going through some of the processes, and I know very much with it from the Unison side was around that kind of social mobility as well. And I think as Beam progresses and finds its feet, I think there's definitely lots of opportunities. So we'll probably end up revisiting this in meetings in the future. In terms of timeframes, we can see where Beam is and be able to improve that for the local community. So yeah, very much welcome any comments, and I'd like to pass it over just to Jackie as the Unison steward, just to add her comments from the local joint panel, if that's okay.
Thank you, Alex. Basically, Unison have been working in close collaboration with HR on this policy, and we came up with a few additional pointers to the actual revised policy, and we went through it all with Alex and the team to come up with the final version, which you have before you now. And we were very happy to take it to local joint panel, and it was then ready for your scrutiny. So if you have any further comments, Alex and I are here to help.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much to Alex and to Jackie for introducing that and explaining the background. Any comments? Councillor Connolly.
Really, haven't I? Thank you so much. I really welcome the revised policy, and I thank the officers and the Beam managers and your team, your colleagues, Jackie, for all of the work. I think it's a really careful revision, and I'm grateful for the report at the beginning of it, which explains in detail the changes that you've made. So I think it's a great piece of work, and it's ready to go, no problem. I still think there is a tension around the implied employment status, and it's not going to go away, is it, with a group of that many people? I think within this document, the concern is that the early part of the document really emphasises that that risk, and very clearly says that effectively volunteers can do what they like, really. But then later in the document, it talks about a volunteer agreement. It lists 4 or 5 policies that we expect them to follow. And it doesn't say anything about, well, what if they don't? Now, it may be that some of those other policies, health and safety policy or whatever, may have to have something in those, because there really is a what if. If somebody's persistently late for a reception role, maybe, what are you going to do? What if somebody does something unsafe behind the scenes against the health and safety instructions? And presumably you're not just going to walk them off the premises, you know. Presumably somebody will have a chat to them first, maybe observe them, maybe buddy them, maybe move them to a different role. That has to be thought about. So whether it's in this document or in one of the subordinate policies, that's up to you guys. But I don't think that my concern there has completely gone away. But that doesn't take away from the amount of work that you've done. So thank you very much.
Alex, would you like to respond?
No, not first of all, thanks, Councillor Connolly. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of work in there, and again, it's I suppose it's never going to be completely finished for that one. Yeah, I think volunteering is it's an interesting space, I suppose, to think about and to look. So I think there's some other aspects I think that came up in local joint panel as well, that I think volunteering is in law is quite, it's an interpretation, there's grey areas, so I think that's something we just really have to work on and decide upon. But I think, ultimately the manager on duty is responsible for the safety of everybody there. So I think, in terms of if someone was being dangerous or unsafe, I would absolutely expect that manager to, take them off site for that point, and then it's return and see if there's training or support we can give them. So there is, I'd say if something happened right now, that it would be dealt with, kind of in a same manner as a staff member to make sure people were safe. But yeah, we do need to look into some further details. So we will add that to further revisions to see what we can do in terms of where does that sit in the right place. I'm also, I suppose, quite cautious just because we have a new government that's looking at a lot of labour laws at the moment and employment laws. So it'd be very interesting to see if they touch upon these agreements and engagements, because it seems like everything's on the table at the moment. In terms of in employment relations circles, it's just everything is, every email is like, get ready for the changes. So but no one knows what the changes are, so I'm fully expecting these employment relationships and things to come under changes. So I think that we can see what comes from the government and then see what we can weave in and see what we need to do to address those concerns. But yeah, I do note them, and I think there's something that we should address.
Thank you very much, Alex. Councillor Hollibon.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, just want to add my congratulations for the work that's gone into this volunteering policy. And I think we should probably pencil in a yearly review, as I believe you alluded to, Alex, because it's this work in progress. And as previously been identified, there may be things that come to light that may need to be tightened up. So I would suggest an annual review, Chair.
Is that a proposal?
My suggestion is a proposal, Chair. Thank you. As long as somebody supports me, of course.
So do I have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Deafley? So I guess we can add that to the recommendations. Are there any other comments? Any other proposals? Okay, good. So right. So the recommendation is to approve the amendments to the Beam volunteering policy, A, and ask for the policy to be reviewed in a year's time at this meeting. So do I need to have another proposer for the whole thing? Okay, so another proposer, councillor Connolly, and a seconder, councillor Hollybon. All those in favour? That's carried. Right. So thanks. Moving on to item 8, urgent items. Are there any urgent items? No urgent items. So thank you all for your participation, and thank you all for the questions, and thank you officers for being here. And that concludes the meeting at 19:40.